You have a copy of that, chance, of which cash flow thing.
Yes, it's on the very back page of your.
Oh.
Do you want me to go through what's in that pack? Because there's a bunch of
Yeah.
stuff. So each council person that's here got a pack of information. Some of it is the routine things that we use for Finance Committee, and there are a few new things. Inside the pack, there's a second paper-clipped pack. I've had requests from a few council people for a list of total expenditures so far this year from the fire department, the police department, Fund 11 and Fund 12, as well as a list of outstanding purchase orders for each of those. That's what this pack is. It tells you at the top of each page which fund or which department it is, and this is for your reference. Those of you that came by the office and got the actual eGov printout ones, they're a little harder to read. Because there's a lot of budgetary lines in there, you'll see every expenditure has also a negative line below it, and that is just showing where it came out of appropriations or off of a PO. So you have a positive expenditure out and a negative amount to that PO. I tried to eliminate or decrease those on these lists because they're basically duplicate entries in the system. Try to make it a little easier to read. So that's what that packet is. We've got in the back of it the cash flow page. You've all seen this before. It just shows how much cash we expect to come in and what our expenditures are for each month through the end of the year. That is an ongoing thing. Statement of cash position you get every month. It's this long page, and it shows the current fund balances, the revenue and expenditures for each one of those funds, also year to date. The one you want to look at is the third from the right column, which is the unexpended balance. That's the actual, if you want to think of it as a cash balance at this time. The encumbrance line next to it is open purchase orders. So the ending balance is all purchase orders taken off of the cash balance. So the third from the last is the actual money that's available. This is where people look and say, oh wait, the city's got $7.3 million in the bank, why can't we pay bills? They're locked up in all these other funds. General fund has to pay for general fund. You can't go to the water fund and take money from that to pay general fund bills. That would be illegal. Also within this pack is a list of all outstanding bills at this time. And it's this long pack that's thick. This is what's produced every month for you guys. This is all invoices for the city, including every dime to C9 Trust and the Police and Fire Pension Fund and everything else. This is everything we owe and the dates of when those bills were generated. The most important pieces from this list are what is made on the general fund most urgent bill list. So basically our accounts payable clerk goes through, talks to all the vendors, the ones that are calling us the most, what are the most urgent things, what is being cut off, what should we be paying, and that's what this list is. And when we get to this point, you'll see there's three columns. One is a total column, and then I broke out what's owed from March and what's owed from April and May, and my suggestion is we pay that middle column, which is what's owed from March. I had requests from two different council people on overtime reports just for this pay period. Now, the way overtime reports are done is a manual process of slips that come in attached to the payroll sheet for each individual. So this is not an everyday occurrence that we can generate a list like this. This took man hours to create. But the question came up, first of all, year-to-date overtime for all departments in the city. If we look at the first 15 payrolls of this year, we compare it to where we were for the first 15 payrolls of last year. Those are these columns. The first column, that's year-to-date expense for 2016. How much have we expended? You'll notice there's two keys that are negative. Those are adjustments made from early in the year, usually for people in parks or areas like that or building where they're paid or covered out of another fund, so that money is reduced, the level of expenditure there. You'll see the second column, this is the total overtime paid in the first 15 payrolls for 2015. And then taking those two and comparing them and seeing, are we going up or are we going down? Has there been an increase or a decrease in those payroll keys for overtime only? And you'll see at the very bottom with the totals, this year, the entire city, including the water and street funds, year-to-date, we are at $372,823.93 in overtime. Year-to-date last year, at the same time, was $392,216.41, which is a decrease of 4.94% from where we were last year. However, remember, last year we had among the highest overtime expenditures that we had had in about 10 years. So it was not a good year for overtime last year. Third column is percentages. Is it going up? Is it going down? And the two biggest ones, police and fire. 2015, we had $117,954.64 in the first 15 pay periods. This year, current, $175,956, and that's a 49% increase. Fire department, this time last year, $253,059. This year, $185,470, which is a 26.7% decrease from 15 to 16. We did hire, under the SAFER grant, more firemen, which is why you see a decrease there. There was not a SAFER grant for police. Based on this, it was requested what overtime is going for. The current pay period from 6/26/16 to 7/9/16, the police department had 321 hours of overtime. The question was, what was all that overtime used for? That is what this long list is. This is, and I didn't put people's names by it. That is public information, but I don't want to bring that out here unless somebody wants to come in the office and look at it. I just put a number, but you'll see like officer number 1 there, each occurrence of overtime, how many hours it is, and what it's for. A lot of these make total sense. You've got minimum manpower overtime. You've got people doing canine training. You've got people doing late runs, pursuit crash paperwork. And I'd say the majority is things like that. People that had to work over on special crimes, and those are all listed. But there's other ones on here that are apparent non-emergent, and that'll be up to you guys to look over. This was what was correct requested and what we provided. So that is for your reference and should go along with that other big pack of information, and we can ask any questions related to that, answer any questions related to that. There is the purchase order request for insufficient appropriations list. This is what you get every month. This is outstanding. When a PO comes to us and we don't have appropriations for it or it's not been appropriated, we send it back to them with a letter saying resubmit this for a lower amount or close out POs and resubmit it or talk to finance. This is just that list. I talked to Mr. Mumper. There are a few things on this list that have been dealt with but are still on the list just because it was a PO that bounced back, so we'll take those off for next time. That's pretty much everything I've got. There is a letter from me saying that we've looked at the first 15 payrolls worth of expenditures for all keys in the city, and if we project the next 12 payrolls, this is a 27 payroll cycle this year, not a 26, that our appropriations will be insufficient to meet that need, which is why we don't have cash to pay bills now. All of our money is going to payroll. If all our money goes to payroll, there's nothing left over to pay other things, which is why we've got a huge stack of invoices that are outstanding, and why we need to talk about paying what we can pay this month. The financial recommendation, anytime this happens, as I have stated in previous letters, is that the way to save money, if you're just looking at a financial thing, is to cut services, cut retirees' benefits, close departments, lay people off until it balances. Now that's an easy thing to say from a financial standpoint, because I'm looking at the budget and saying, if you want to make it balanced, this is what you need to do. But that's not making a decision based on what the needs of the community are. So from a financial standpoint, you want this to balance, that's how you balance it. From a moral, safety, ethical standpoint, that's up to administration and you guys. Payroll. July is a 3 payroll month. Because of the extra payroll period in 2016, January, July, and December all have extra payrolls. That extra payroll is going to equate to about an additional $435,000, $440,000 that we're not going to have to pay in July. That money will come in from our property tax settlement that'll come in September. If we request the payments as they're collected, which we did by sending a letter today, then we'll get that money early, but I don't know if it's going to come early enough to hit that payroll by the end of July. I know that it'll come in August, meaning we'll be able to afford 3 payrolls in August, but we're not going to be able to afford 3 payrolls in July unless that money comes in. I'm not going to know if that money's coming in until the 25th, the 26th of July. Or how much is coming in is the appropriate way to say it. Something will come this month. Is it going to be enough to cover that other payroll? I don't know. So I sent a letter out last week before the last payroll, because there's been 2 so far in July, saying to all department heads this exact thing. We may not have the cash to make all 3 payrolls in July. We expect to have it to make all 3 payrolls in August. Plan on getting paid Monday, August 1st, instead of Friday, July 29th. If the money comes in on the 25th or 26th from the property taxes, we'll have enough and we'll run that payroll on the 29th and everyone will be happy. But if not, plan on waiting till that Monday. That process should not delay the other 2 payrolls that'll come in August. They should go on top. I would anticipate that a similar situation may happen in December, just from a cash flow standpoint. When we look at how much goes out in our personnel costs, how much goes out in the retiree benefits that we're paying, not even the ones that we're promising to pay, but we haven't, but in the ones we're paying, and the other expenses that have hit this year, even with not paying a lot of our bills, our biggest expenditure, to the tune of 76% of the general fund budget, is payroll, personnel-related expenses, health insurance. We are focusing on paying health insurance early in the process because we don't want that canceled. We owe that to our employees. The next big priority is, if we've got the cash, to make payroll. Every 2 weeks you get your paycheck. We may be faced with that situation at the end of July where it's a couple days, 1 business day late. We may be faced with that situation in December. All that being said, we get a lot of calls for things that have to be paid. One of the situations we're running into now, and something we need to look at paying, is money moving to Fund 27, the EMS fund. We need to buy medications for the medics. They need rubber gloves to do their jobs. We owe about $27,000 right now in that fund in outstanding invoices. The only resource, the only revenue stream that Fund 27, the EMS fund, has is the general fund. So at the end of every month, we look at how much we can afford to transfer over and we pay the most arrears bills. But now, they can't buy Narcan, which is the drug that reverses the effect of heroin temporarily. So, not only that, all the other medications, we have to be able to fund some of that. Looking at the totals we've got right now and the most arrears bills in that fund, if we move about $3,000 into it this month, it should bring things close enough that then we can pay the most arrears bills so that they can keep purchasing things. Basically, that'll bring them up with only one outstanding bill to the medication company. Only 1 month that's outstanding, and hopefully they'll start selling us medications again, because we can't go without it. As we kind of get into this list, we can't afford to pay everything that we owe. And if we're not, and if we can't make that payroll at the end of the month, it gives us about $128,000 this month to spend on outstanding bills that are basically companies that are cutting us off. And so I think one of the things to think about is paying some money into the EMS fund so we can pay those drug companies. Some of the things that, starting with how much money we have at the beginning of the month and counting down backwards, what are the things we can pay and how far down the list can we afford to get? Police and fire pension, we paid $200,000 to it. We have to pay them $200,000 every month and a lump sum first quarter of next year when we get next year's property taxes. Or if we miss one payment or pay less than the $200,000, they will take our property taxes. We've got a plan to get caught up and paid back with them. They have accepted it, and that's what we're doing. The first payroll, which was paid on July 1st, general fund amount of payroll was $402,497. We paid Anthem medical insurance for our employees, $223,000. The July 15th payroll, roughly $417,000. Benovation. This is the retirees' health care key. We're 2 months behind on paying the premium on what used to be called the Millennium Plan, but basically is a gap insurance for our retirees. If they have Medicare, if they have OPERS, if they have the police and fire pension fund, we pay for a separate insurance plan that is a gap insurance for them to the tune of about $25,000, $24,000 a month premium. In addition to that, when they go to the doctor's office, and first of all, it's applied to their retirees, the state plan that they have for their insurance. Then this insurance plan kicks in and pays for it. Then out of this, if there's anything left that's not covered from that visit, for a group of these retirees, we pay the doctor's office through Benovation, through the company that manages this. And so those things are mixed in there, and those are the name of them, the actual bills to the doctors. On top of that, there are some employees that get their medications paid for, and they go directly to CVS and pick them up, and a bill is sent to Benovation, which is the company that manages these insurance plans, and we get that bill. And we've been told if we don't stay up with this, that we will be in violation of federal insurance laws. And letters will go out to all of the retirees saying that they're canceling the medical insurance, and so we have to make monthly payments, if not the full amount, at least keeping up to where we are every month, or they'll cancel it, and it will be in all kinds of violations of things that I don't understand. That'll be questions for the law director. So that's Benovations. We paid $39,749. Now, just that retirees benefit plan, just that health care, average every month, $43,000. $43,000 every month. On top of that is the C9 Trust, which we're not making payments to now. That averages about $30,000 a month in additional expenses. So that's when I talked about retirees' health care needing to be looked at and being considered for restructuring. We had a long discussion with Mrs. Hanrahan today. I know that Mr. Sanker has been looking into this, and long-term, that's something that we do need to consider. Bond retirement, $5,700. That is the monthly interest payment. We must make that. If we miss payments, then we are in violation of our bond payments, and that's fiscal emergency. The next payroll we would project, actually it's $417,000 is what I projected here for that third payroll. We don't have enough balance to cover it without getting the advance from the state, or from the county. You also see OPERS. We were behind 2 months, I think, on the Ohio Police, or correctly, Public Employees Retirement System. We did make a payment to that because they were starting to send threatening letters. Now, given that, if we know we're not going to hit the payroll without the money coming in from the county, that'll leave us to pay other bills $128,000. The big part of these other bills that I'm concerned about right now and that the tax commissioner has been talking about is we're 90 days behind on the tax refunds. $81,229. Under, I think it's Ohio Revised Code or maybe the statute of the city of Norwood, these people can start getting interest payments if we don't pay this. So that's going to grow. So the tax refunds of $81,000 I would suggest paying. Going from there, we move to the list of the general fund most urgent bills. And you'll see I broke out into 2 columns. What's owed through March, right? If we pay that middle column there, that's all of these outstanding bills that will be paid up through March, and then the ones that will be paid up through April. I would add in one thing, the very bottom thing that's added on, the IRS bill for $273 we should pay. It's due by July 31st. We pay that fee because we are a self-insured company, meaning, I was talking about retirees' health care, that whole gap insurance, paying for people's prescriptions, all of that. Because we do that, we have to pay a fee to the IRS. So I wouldn't let that one go. $273, I'd pay that because they're the IRS. And that is, I think, everything I brought.
All right. Couple of questions, Jim, just on some of our projected revenue on that intergovernmental fund. I know we were behind, a few months, especially in April. We didn't get near what we expected in May. Will that be part of what we're going to be getting from the county to get us close to what we had actually projected and compared to what our actual that came in April and May?
I would say that the projections starting in July and moving forward are probably close to being accurate, with the exception that, and I think that's probably pretty accurate, you might see some of the October money coming in September, just balancing out. The negative things in the beginning, especially those in January, and also then reflected in April, you'll see some of April, well, all of May was made up of what we got in June, and some of April was. Last year, when the county sends the property tax in, it sends a sheet that is the county settlement sheet, and it tells you this much money goes to the general fund, this much money should go to the bond retirement, this much goes to the TIFs. And each TIF is listed individually, and there's probably about 7 of them right now that money goes into from that. The county started using new software this year, which is why there was a delay, because they were trying to make all of those calculations work in their new system. The end of last year, what was reported on the county settlement sheet showed about a $65,000 payment that came in as property tax that should have gone to one of the TIFs. One of the TIF's projections was 65,000 under, and the general fund's money was 65,000 over. So when we looked at those figures at the beginning of the year, and we found that, we had to make that correction. We had to take 65,000 out of that key and do a negative revenue and do a positive revenue into the TIF fund. Now what that did was, it decreased how much we're bringing in by 65,000 this year, but it also made last year's 65,000 less. So if we're basing what we got last year, or we're going to get this year on what we had last year, our original projections were over by 65,000. So that actually doubles it. It makes it 130,000, which is why you've got some actual revenue being under what was projected in the first quarter of this year. So that evens out through the rest of the year. The delay was, like we talked about, the county money not coming in on time because of software issues that they had.
The April and May, most of it was caught up in June, right? It's going to get enough revenue.
Yes. Well, mostly it's a little lower than what it was by that 130,000 because we had to take 65 back out.
All right, so I guess a few of the things that we need to, I guess, discuss and decide upon will, if the revenue coming in doesn't allow us to make the last payroll on the 29th of July, and that does bump into Monday, August the 1st, we would have some money to get caught up on, like the renovations and the tax refunds. It's not much more than that, but if that is what actually happens, then that may be what we need to do with the little bit that would be left there. However, if the revenue does come in to allow us to meet the payroll, then these items then get bumped into August, get rolled over there, and then wait and see what revenue comes in August to see about getting caught up on those as well. So that's kind of the gist of where we're at as far as on being able to meet the payroll this month and what major outstanding bills requirements that we do need to cover, specifically our insurance, our PDRS, police and fire pension payments. I mean, we negotiate with them to get the payment plan we have now to allow us to get caught up, which we don't want to miss that $200,000 payment in order for that for us to become default on our agreement. So, but I think that's where we're at, as far as what we can pay, what's available to pay, as far as payroll and that these particular items that we just discussed. A couple things that had come up in the past, and one obviously has been the vest for the police department. I know we have been working on a potential plan to get that funded, but as of this afternoon, we hadn't heard back whether that actually had come through as yet. So that we're waiting to hear on that as far as a funding source for some events. Donna, did you?
The members of the council, I received a call after the last council meeting from a gentleman that I know that works for a local company. It was his desire that he and a partner company would provide the money for the vests. As with us, there is a process to go through for these companies. It's been approved locally, but it has to go up the food chain. They were meeting this afternoon with their finance committee. When I texted him prior to coming to the meeting just a few minutes ago, he said that it was going well, but he wouldn't know anything officially until tomorrow. But he left it up to me whether or not to tell you this tonight, and I felt like that if we say it right, we'll get it right. While we don't have the check in hand, the plan is that tomorrow, perhaps tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon, that we would have confirmation that between the two companies, there would be about $15,000 available to purchase vests. But I do not have that in hand, and I would caution that unless and until that word officially comes down,
Correct.
that we won't know it until we get the official word.
Thanks, Donna. Yeah, we're still working on it. Hopefully, we can get that confirmation by tomorrow. And along with that, if it does come through, and even if it doesn't come through, we will probably have to have a special council meeting to, number one, figure out if we need to change something within our appropriation and within our sheets in order to accept and or make the payment of where it would go. So we have to work out the logistics so that if and when it does come through, so be aware we probably need a special council meeting, in order to make that happen. On that same topic, as far as some expenditures that or requests that we also had a request for tickets and forms, and one of the things that we were looking at was taking that out of Fund 6. Feel we can potentially do that. And we will need a special council meeting in order to make that happen. If we find out we can't do that, we at least will have till next year to adjust the books through the auditors, the state auditors, if indeed they do say that, well, we should have really done it this way, but as far as we can tell by all the checking we've been doing, we should be able to make that happen. And if not, well, then next year we'll have to pay it back and take it from somewhere else. So,
What's the cost of the citations?
do you remember what the cost for the citations were? Rather, it's about, I can't quite remember, it's about 4.
I have it written down in my office.
I think it was around 5,000 if I remember correctly.
Bill, you remember on the citations, was that around 4?
Around 4 grand. I want to say 4,500.
Oh, 4. Okay. Okay, thank you. So, hopefully that'll work out, but we have to get the paperwork squared away on that as well. So if we report that out tonight, if we're in agreement that we want to do it that way, report that out, and we can have that report on the agenda for the special meeting, and then also change the appropriations to move forward, with that as well. Did have letter we received from the Health Department as far as, covering the expense of the board members, and then also the SPCA fees for 2016 for animal bites and things of that nature. But so I didn't know if there's where to move with that at this point. However, they also had the funding of about $645 for state fees for the swimming pool license. These fees are paid, at least according to the letter, paid for by the swimming pool operator, and they're just a move through the general fund. So we make that adjustment in order to cover that, the state fees. That's how we did that last year.
I think it was just included within their regular appropriations last year. I did the first 6 months of the year mainly focusing on payroll issues and where money has to be moved from one key to the next. There were several keys that we could move money within in smaller amounts within the general fund. What was the total amount they needed?
The swimming pool was $645, and the SPCA was $532.
Maybe about 3,200. I'll look at it and see. I can send you a copy of the file with all of the current expenditures and then the projections through the rest of the year.
And as far as talking with the treasurer's office, June was up a little bit from last year, as we knew from the last meeting, but July was not quite running ahead of last year, but we'll hopefully the next 2 weeks something that picks up a little bit in order to get to where what we had projected. We'll have to see. So, these were the two major things that we needed to really put forth to take care of immediately. The other thing needed to be discussed was the on the payroll deal. If we're in agreement to report out that if the money does not come in to meet the payroll, that we bump it in to August the 1st. And if we can't pay it, it's not going to be there. We have to bump it anyway, but at least we can get the support of council.
And I think that's the question, is if we don't have enough money to hit the payroll by the time we would run it on the 25th or so. If it hasn't come in by then that leaves us with $128,000 to $129,000. If we're going to be bumping it to August, if we hit that point where we know that there's not enough to make it, should we go ahead and pay these other urgent things, that we've owed since March, and the tax refunds and the money the money to the EMS fund, the few $1,000s, I think we just need to do that either way.
Yes, correct. I mean,
because we should do that tomorrow.
When we move a payroll from the end of the month to the first of the next, who writes the letter to the employees to tell them that?
I've already sent a letter out to all department heads notifying them. It went out last week saying that this is a likelihood of what may happen, so prepare for it, we hope it doesn't. And then that should be given from all department heads to employees. When I've done it in the past, usually the mayor gets copies and puts it in all the previous paychecks that go out, but they went out to each department head.
Good.
And council got a copy too, I'm not sure if they gave it to you yet.
okay. So if that's the case, what we'll do is report out that we're in agreement on the payroll if that happens. Number two, the limited funds that are left over will be used to pay some more bills, including the EMS money, potentially as many of the tax refunds, so we don't get hit with penalties on that, the IRS fee. And we'll also look at hopefully having a follow-up full council meeting, a special meeting to change the appropriations, moving the requisition for the tickets and the printing of citations from Fund 6, as well. And then depending on what we hear on the vest situation, we'll have that ready to go on the appropriation change as well.
Question on the vest. We buy them from Camp? Is that who we buy the vest from?
I think Roy Taylor.
Roy Taylor. Now, are they on the state term contract for that? Is that why we don't bid something like that?
Are they on the, no, I don't believe so.
My preference in the whole situation would be the private company that's making the donation to pay them and not go through us and then donate the vests. If they're unwilling to do that, a comment came up, could we use the Norwood Police Association and not have the money come through the city and have them donate to that association, have them pay for it? Or the third preference would be have the money earmarked only for vest and it goes into the health department grant fund because we can make a sub-key for it there and the money is already appropriated, and then have the health department grant fund pay for the vests. That way, it's a PO outside of the general fund, and if we already owe Roy Taylor money, they're not going to apply that $15,000 to the bill we already owe, instead just go to the vests. So
I'm worried about the donors' tax deduction, and so I
Yes.
think it probably either needs to be, and I don't know if they will. That was
Yes.
a suggestion that the chief made. I won't
that's a good one.
take credit for
Yeah.
that. The chief made that suggestion. That would still allow that company to take that off as a tax write-off, because they are a private institution.
That-
Or the city would be the only way that they would be able to take that off
Yeah.
as a tax write-off.
If they're willing to do it, going through the Norwood Police Association is probably the most painless in the process and the one that can happen the quickest.
Wait, to get the money.
Yeah. Do any of you have any questions for me? I know several of you requested a big stack of info, which is what I brought.
I have a question. So I'm looking at the accounts outstanding that we owe Roy Taylor dating from February through June of this year to the tune of about $6,500 or so. Does that sound about right?
And which one is that?
In the accounts that we owe?
Right.
Right, okay.
What subheading? What's the,
For Roy Taylor.
yes.
That we owe from like February of this year through June of this year, about $6,500.
Yeah, those are the bills that we haven't paid them for yet. Yes.
Worst case scenario, is it possible to use the money that we would have extra not for payroll to pay them, so that way we could purchase the vests?
If other things didn't work out, we may have to. Yeah, it looks like there's a lot of small invoices, but like you said, to bring it up to, it may not even end up being that much. You could bring them up to 90 days or bring them up to 60 days.
Right,
Right.
that was what I was thinking.
That's one of the things that we're gonna have to keep in consideration as to how this all comes together. And those things will be paid, like I said, around the 25th when we pay the rest of this stuff, if things go that way.
Thank you.
So just a worst case scenario question. If for some reason this money does not come through, we are able to get the money to make payroll, will there be money additional that we'll be able to purchase the vests if we need to? Because you're saying, we don't make the payroll, we're gonna have this chunk of money that we can pay these other bills.
But the situation is, there's no appropriations for it.
Okay,
The money's not been budgeted.
okay.
We're already over budget on payroll, so we can't just add a new line and add money to it. We have to cut something. So if you're gonna buy something for $15,000, you gotta take something that costs $15,000 that we were planning on paying and eliminate it. Just adding money or just saying, well, we're just gonna make this PO, I think is very unethical from the standpoint of, we're gonna go in and enter into an agreement with somebody that I'm telling you now, we can't pay. That, I think, would be fraud. So we'd have to figure out somewhere else to eliminate that $15,000, which was gonna be a painful process